video is about tuning. And while there is no one definitive way to tune a harp, I'm going to be sharing with you how I approach it and why. I'd also like to discuss some less well-known facts about tuning and how they impact our instruments. But first, let's start with the big picture. So when I teach, I often say to my students that the more that they tune, the less they'll need to tune. So what does that mean exactly? So the more frequently that you tune your harp, the better it will stay in tune and the less time it will take you each time to tune it. Think of it like you're training for a marathon. If you train every day and you get stronger every day, then it's better, right? But with the harp, it's very similar. You're training the strings to stay at a certain pitch level, so the more consistent you are with that, the more likely they are to stay at that pitch level. So please have the discipline and try to tune your harp just about every day. This is especially important for new harps and also harps that have been recently rebuilt, but it's very important for all harps and it'll require less time in the future. An example of an instrument that holds its pitch really well is this Lyon & Healy Style 23 from 2005. It originally belonged to Marcia Dickstein, a studio harpist in Los Angeles, and I encountered it on the Barbra Streisand tour and convinced her to sell it to me. But this harp has been all over the world with me in many different climates and conditions, travel, etc., and it holds its pitch really, really well. I attribute that to Marcia and my diligence in just keeping it in tune as much as possible. So it's really worth your time to tune every day. One little side note, this harp is also, if you've ever heard the Hamilton cast recording, this is the harp that I used on it, and you might recognize the song. Satisfied from Hamilton. But I digress. Please keep your harps in tune. Now let's talk about the best conditions in which to keep your harp and to keep it in tune. So everybody knows that a harp should not be subjected to extreme hot temperatures or extreme cold temperatures. But what is less frequently discussed is that humidity has a bigger impact on tuning and on the health of your instrument than temperatures do. Again, try to keep your harps in a good temperature range, but even more importantly is to keep the humidity as consistent as possible. You please use a humidifier or a dehumidifier depending on which season that you're in. Because the humidity is the water in the air, it makes the strings expand and contract, which of course is going to impact the tuning, and it also affects the wood too. I prefer to keep my humidity between 50 and 65%. Some people go as low as 40%, but I try to keep it between those. Make sure you get yourself a hygrometer. This measures the relative humidity in the air, and that way you can keep an eye on it. It was interesting when I was in New York and I was the harpist at Wicked. I was not in the pit, I was in a room by myself. And I pretty much year round, I would have to either be running a humidifier or in the wintertime or dehumidifier in the summertime. So taking care of these appliances became part of my pre-show ritual, either emptying the tanks of water or filling them up with water. So it's when I moved down here to South Florida in 2019, things are much different down here. It's a lot more humid, but the air conditioning tends to take most of the humidity out of the air. So it's really only in the wintertime that I have to run the dehumidifier. Took me a while to figure that out, but we're all set now. So try to keep your humidity as consistent as possible, and that's going to help you keep your harp in tune and also keep the wood and everything in good shape. And the last point about the best conditions for your harp is to keep your instruments away from all light sources, keep them away from the windows, keep your blinds closed, and also any heat sources, air conditioning vents, heaters, things of that nature. It's extremely bad for the instrument, so you want to be aware of that. And then also something that's not discussed very often is keep your harp away from your bathroom. Those daily showers really make the humidity fluctuate a lot, and that's really bad for the tuning, and not so great for the instrument overall. So if you can, depending on the size of where you live, try to keep your harp away from your bathroom as well. Let's go over how to tune the harp now. If you have a pedal harp, please remember to put your pedals in the highest position, in the all flat position. So why do we tune in the key of C flat major, which is the key that we have when the pedals are in the flat position? This gives us the open strings. There's no tension on them at all. And as long as your harp is well regulated, this is definitely the best way to tune your pedal harp. If you have a lever harp, please check with your teacher about the best strategy. I began lessons on a lever harp, and my teacher taught me how to tune the instrument in E flat major, which gave me the most chromatic possibilities. But again, your teacher will be able to suggest the best way for you to do that. There is one exception to tuning your harp all in flats. Say it's been a while since you've had your harp regulated and you're in orchestra and you're doubling another instrument. And the notes are not flat notes, and you have to have those notes exactly in tune. In that case, you want to tune in whatever key or whatever notes that need to be exactly with another instrument. But again, if you keep your harp regulated once a year, usually is the best time, then you shouldn't have to do that. But just know that sometimes we do have to make exceptions to the all flat rule. Let's talk about tuning devices and apps now. When I first started to play the harp, tuners were very large, not very portable, and definitely very expensive. So my first teacher tried to teach me how to tune with a tuning fork. So you may know about this, but this is A440, and so basically with the tuning fork you would tune the A. I always started with the A below middle C, tune in fifths, and then from octaves from there. Now if that sounds complicated, it definitely was for me as a young girl, and I even though I tried very hard, I was never very good at it. So fortunately I was very happy when electronic tuners became smaller, more portable, and definitely less expensive. So I kind of graduated to those relatively quickly, thankfully. And I have my assortment of all my tuners I've used over the last 40 years here. A big shout out, the one that I use the most, I love these, I had several versions, this is, I believe, a Korg DT3, and then this pickup is actually for classical guitar. It's a Dean Markley, but it works great on the harp. I would just slip it in between a couple of strings and then tune. I only use the pickup when it's loud. Otherwise, I just put the tuner on a stand or on the base of the harp. When I needed to tune the strings that this was between, I would just move it a little bit, go up and down the harp. So definitely for many, many decades, This is the setup that I used. Don't forget to put an extra battery in your bag, because you never know. But in the past, 5-10 years, I've definitely been using apps, the tuning apps on the phone. And so I've tried a lot of different tuning apps over the years, and the one that I've settled on the past 5 or so years, ClearTune is fantastic for all of the non-wire strings. So that means all of the gut strings and the nylon strings. I find that the best. This is what ClearTune looks like. I usually use it on my phone, but I'm going to show you on my iPad. And then thanks to a tip from one of the bass players in my orchestra, for the wire strings, I actually use an app called Sound Corset. And this picks up the frequencies, the lower frequencies, much better than ClearTune does. And as a result of using this app, I actually find that my hearing, that my tuning ability in the low registers has gotten better even. So I'm very grateful for the Sound Corset, and also grateful to my bass player friend who gave me the tip. So basically I put the, as I said, the phone or iPad on a stand, or else on the base of the harp. You can have pickups for these. iPhone has a pickup, or a microphone, but of course you need some kind of adapter. But in general, I do find that it works really well, except in the loudest of orchestra rehearsals. So that's what I use, and of course you need a tuning key. But you're probably wondering where to begin. So which string to start on is a very personal matter. I know people do a lot of different things. I think because of my tuning fork experience, for some reason I always start on the A below middle C. Of course it's going to be A flat because your pedals, or my pedals, are in the flat position. But I just tune going down by string all the way down to the A, right? And then I go above all the way to the top, so all the way up. And then I switch the app to the sound corset and go from the G down for the wire strings. So that's just the way that I do it. I've been doing it so long. I was trying to figure out why I do it, but again, I think it's mostly because of that tuning fork. But what's most important is that, of course, you tune all the strings. Please do not be a little bit lazy and not tune the lower two strings, right? I know it can be a pain, but it's very important. Why? Our harp has this beautiful resonance. It's one of the characteristics of the instrument sound, and which is a lot of overtones. So you want the entire harp to be in tune, including the strings. You might not be using the last two strings or the higher strings, but the overtones, especially with the wire strings, are going to sound wherever you play on the harp. So make sure you keep those low strings tuned. There are no discs on the lower two strings, so you need to pick a pitch. It's either C flat, natural, or sharp. I know we don't use those notes very often, but when I do use them, they tend to be natural, so I keep my low to C and D in the natural. I tune them to C natural and D natural. So just make sure you tune thoroughly. Try to get there early if you're at a rehearsal, so you can have the quietest possible environment, and then all should be well, as long as you keep your harp well regulated. Once a year, get your harp regulated. Two quick things about tuning as well. The first is, what do you tune to? So when I lived in New York City, all the harpists there, myself included, we tuned our harp to 441. That means that the A was pitched at 441. When I moved down here, one of the conductors that I work with the most, he requested that I tune my harp to 440. So now that I live in Miami, I have started tuning all my harps to 440 instead. If you live in Europe, it could be 442. So in other words, either ask your teacher or ask the local harpists in the area what the standard is to tune to. The second thing is, if when you're tuning and you notice that a string, it doesn't seem to have a pitch center, it sounds a little bit off, the needle on the tuner is fluctuating a lot, it's hard to get a read on it, that means that the string is false, and please change it right away. Just take the time to do it. It's better to catch it at that point. First of all, because it sounds terrible and it's out of tune, and secondly, it's going to break at some point, and you don't want it to break at a less opportune time. One prominent ballet harpist that I know well, I've seen her like right before the downbeat of Nutcracker, become unhappy with a couple of strings, whips out her string bag, changes them right before the downbeat of a Nutcracker playing principal harp. So if she can do it, and if I could do it during the show at Wicked, something breaks and you just whip it out and change it, you know. You just get good at this, and it's better to catch it when it's false than at a less opportune time, such as during a performance. And then I'd like to close out this video by discussing a couple of things that I don't think are talked about quite as much, but just stuff that I've learned over the years. And the first thing is that the human ear can actually hear flat notes more readily than sharp notes. So I'm talking about just minor differences. If a note is a little bit flat, that's going to be more perceptible than if a note is a little bit sharp. So the reason I bring this up is, say you have a pin, like on an old harp, sometimes the pins, they get stuck and they can't go exactly into the position that you want. Aim to tune that note slightly sharp, not slightly flat. You'll be less likely to be perceived as being out of tune, okay? So the human ear can hear flat notes more readily than sharp notes. I'm talking about very minor differences. I'm not suggesting that you tune out of tune, but if in an emergency you need to make an adjustment, go for sharp, not flat. And then the last thing I just wanted to remind all of us of, myself included, is when you are tuning, to just slightly press into the pins, not a lot, but especially if you have a new harp or a newly rebuilt harp, you just want to press in just a little bit, and especially on the wire strings. Now, you don't want to do too much of this because the pins have grooves in them, and if you press in too much, it just eats away and creates a lot of sawdust, and it drills out the hole a little bit, and the pins can slip. So you don't want to go overboard with this, but if you find that some of your pins are slipping or they're not holding pitch, then just get in the habit of pressing in a little bit as necessary. So these are some of the things that I've learned over the decades. I actually really enjoy tuning, thank goodness, because we spend so much time doing it. I just wanted to share with you, these are things that I've learned, just as I go, and I hope they are helpful for you. And I hope you enjoyed this video. It's the first one in my new video series, and the next topic is going to be comparing the Premier gut strings with the new BioCarbon strings. So that should be coming soon as well. So I invite you, if you'd like to learn more about me or my new Sherman Harp Studio, which is an all online teaching studio, please visit busytuning.com. So thank you again for watching.